Hey guys. Tonight we slip quietly into a dimly lit chamber tucked behind silk curtains where the only sounds are the occasional rustle of fabric and the faint crackle of an oil lamp. The floor creaks beneath your feet as you make your way toward a raised wooden platform. It's a bed, but not like any you know. There's no plush mattress to greet you, no goose-down pillow fluffed and waiting. Just a thin mat laid over cold, solid wood. And perched at the head, a curved slab of porcelain that looks more like a minimalist art piece than anything meant for comfort. Go ahead, lay down. No one's judging, except, well, probably your neck. And now a quick reality check. If you're used to memory foam, feather pillows, or even just a semi-decent camping mat, you absolutely would not survive a night in ancient China without complaining. These people had grit, or maybe just really numb backs. Either way, the concept of softness, especially at bedtime, wasn't part of the vocabulary. Pillow? Never heard of her. Support? You wish. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and your local time. I love seeing how far this sleepy little journey travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle onto the platform and feel the grain of aged wood through the woven mat beneath you. It's firm, like ancient tax collector's heart firm. And in a weird way, it's oddly grounding. This was no accident. Ancient Chinese sleepers didn't stumble into discomfort, they perfected it. The belief was simple. Soft things spoiled the body. A proper surface, stiff and stable, encouraged alignment of the spine, harmonized energy flow, and supposedly helped keep your insides from turning into mush overnight. They weren't just sleeping, they were preserving their essence. The firm base beneath you might have been a kong, a raised brick bed that stretched across an entire wall in northern Chinese homes. In the winter, families lit fires underneath it, letting the heat radiate up through the stone, like an ancient sleep heating system. But tonight, you're in a southern-style bed, cool, elevated, and open beneath, no warm embrace from beneath your bones. Just gravity and resolve. And that thing at the top? Not a decoration. That's your pillow. A porcelain headrest, meticulously crafted and glazed, sometimes with intricate floral designs or paintings of birds in flight. The shape arches to cradle your neck, or more realistically, threaten it. But here's the kicker. They genuinely thought it was good for you. Stimulating blood flow, aligning the spine, and keeping your thoughts crisp. Historians still argue whether this was a brilliant ergonomic choice or a collective moment of cultural denial. Even odder, some headrests were believed to channel dreams. Yes, that hunk of decorated clay might have been seen as a portal to divine wisdom. Who needs a dream cloud mattress when you've got a brick promising prophecy? Of course, not all beds were created equal. If you were wealthy or noble, your sleeping platform might be carved from rosewood, your mat made of fine bamboo slats, cool to the touch even in summer. If you were a farmer, though, well, you'd be lucky to have a mat at all. As your body adjusts to the unfamiliar firmness, you can't help but wonder, was there comfort in this severity? Or just discipline disguised as sleep? Either way, there's no going back now. Close your eyes, let the cool porcelain kiss your nape, and prepare to dream like someone who definitely didn't sign up for Tempur-Pedic.
Your back's beginning to make a polite protest, but hush, this is part of the charm. The wood beneath you isn't here to coddle. It's here to remind you. Of what, exactly? Maybe that life is fleeting, or that scoliosis wasn't as big a concern when your average lifespan was barely long enough to master Go. Tonight, you're lying on what amounts to a beautifully maintained slab. Ancient Chinese beds, particularly among the lower and middle classes, were sometimes nothing more than long, smooth wooden platforms. Think monk chic. A thin mat might have been tossed over it if you were lucky, and if you had some cash, maybe woven rattan or straw for extra luxury. Softness? That was for clouds and weak moral character. Now, let's clear something up. The Chinese didn't sleep like this because they didn't know how to make cushions. They could. They were brilliant weavers, artisans, and inventors. But they believed softness invited sloth. Firm beds kept your posture noble, your breath regulated, and your essence, your qi, balanced. That's right, your bed was more acupuncture than snuggle zone. And it gets better, or worse, depending on how committed you are to back health. Archaeological finds from the Han Dynasty reveal entire bed platforms carved out of stone. Stone. Imagine lying down after a long day in the rice fields, slipping into something less comfortable like a slab of granite. Some were even etched with poems or protective talismans, so you could have your spinal realignment and a little bedtime story at the same time. Who said multitasking was modern? But hey, don't feel bad. You're not the only one confused about how this was supposed to be restful. Scholars still debate whether these sleep services were truly effective in improving circulation and spinal alignment, or if people just got really good at pretending they weren't in agony. Maybe it was one of those "the emperor has no pillow" scenarios. As for fringe details, well, there's evidence that some sleepers would dampen their mats before lying down during humid summers. Yes, they added moisture to the situation. Supposedly, it helped cool the body. Supposedly. Of course, it also probably made your back feel like it had been tucked into a lettuce wrap. But hey, priorities. Now, imagine it's the middle of the night. You roll over slightly, hoping to find that magical soft spot that doesn't exist. Nope, just more wood. A splinter, maybe. You think about those modern ads that promise you'll be cradled in sleep? The only thing cradling you right now is the absolute certainty that your ancestors were tougher than you. But here's the twist. You start to relax. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's simple. There's no pressure to be cozy, to fluff, or flip anything. You lie still, bones aligned, and slowly your mind starts to drift. Not because you're lulled by softness, but because there's nothing left to adjust. Your body gives in, or gives up. And in that surrender, maybe, just maybe, you start to understand. This was never about softness. It was about shedding distractions, letting go of excess, and sinking into the kind of stillness that only a rock-hard plank of wood can offer.
Your neck twitches slightly. Not from pain exactly, though let's not lie, there is a sharp awareness of your cervical vertebrae, but from sheer curiosity. That elegant little arc your head's resting on? It's time to get acquainted. Welcome to the world of ancient Chinese headrests, not pillows, headrests. There's a difference, and that difference is roughly the distance between plush cloud and glorified brick. The one beneath your skull tonight is porcelain, cool to the touch, curved just so, and decorated with the delicate cobalt blue of a mountain scene. Maybe a deer, maybe a crane, or maybe, if you're unlucky, a philosophical quote from Confucius about suffering being a path to enlightenment. Very helpful, thanks. But headrests came in all flavors. If you were rich and fancy, you might be sleeping on one made of jade. Yes, actual carved jade, believed to preserve vitality and absorb the impurities of the mind. Or maybe you'd go with lacquered wood, bone inlay, or if you were feeling rustic, a sturdy chunk of bamboo. Bronze was also popular in certain circles, though cold metal doesn't exactly scream bedtime bliss. Unless you think these were just for show, oh no. These headrests were thought to serve several noble purposes: support the neck,
keep the spine aligned, preserve elaborate hairstyles, which, to be fair, took hours and a village to create. Some were hollow, with compartments beneath to store jewelry or herbal pouches meant to calm dreams or chase away ghosts. Yes, ghosts, because even ancient people knew a bad night's sleep can be haunting. Now, let's be honest here. These things look more like miniature stools than bedtime accessories, but archaeologists and historians have recovered hundreds, if not thousands of them across dynasties, so they weren't just decorative. People genuinely used them, even children. Imagine being 9 years old and getting your first birthday headrest instead of a toy. Happy birthday, Xiaomei. It's ceramic with lilies. Try not to chip it when you dream about snacks. And oh, the dreams. Some headrests were engraved with talismans or auspicious symbols meant to guide your spirit through the night. The idea was that your soul, partially detached during sleep, as many Taoist beliefs suggested, could be safely navigated back to your body by the guidance of a properly aligned, spiritually tuned headrest. That's not just sleep, it's astral commuting. Still, not everyone agrees on whether these were actually good for you. Historians still argue whether hard headrests truly aligned the body and prevented disease, or whether this was just a collective moment of societal masochism dressed in health theory. Were people truly waking up refreshed, or just really good at pretending they didn't hate their necks? Fringe alert, there are records of certain headrests being stuffed, not with anything soft, of course, but with crickets. Yep, pet crickets were a popular nighttime soundtrack. The sound was thought to be soothing, and storing them inside your headrest let you drift off to the gentle chirp of ancient white noise. So next time you play a sleep sound app, know you're just doing a high-tech version of Bug in a Box. You shift slightly, letting your neck rest deeper into the curve. It's not cozy, but it is firm, steady, and strangely reassuring. Like a stone-faced monk who's never told a joke but always shows up on time. So sleep on, noble dreamer. Your porcelain perch awaits. Your neck has, somehow, stopped complaining. Not because it's comfortable, don't get cocky, but because it's made peace with its porcelain fate. What starts to whisper for attention now is something else entirely: the chill. Yes, that creeping coolness sneaking up through the mat and into your spine isn't a design flaw. In ancient China, especially in the warmer, more humid southern regions, beds were meant to be cool, cold even. Comfort was found not in snuggling up with a thick blanket, but in maintaining internal balance. Welcome to the Principle of Yin and Yang, Bedroom Edition. According to traditional Chinese medicine, sleep wasn't just about physical rest. It was about energetic harmony. Too much warmth, your yang might spike. Too much softness, your qi could stagnate. But just the right amount of refreshing chill? That was the path to dreamy equilibrium. It's like a spa retreat, except the mattress is a board and your pillow is a brick. That's why those headrests, stone, jade, or porcelain, weren't just symbolic. They held coldness. Cooling the head was thought to calm the spirit, lower inflammation, and reduce excess fire in the body. Think of it as ancient cryotherapy, minus the Instagram reels. You shift your feet, noticing that even the mat beneath you feels faintly damp, not from negligence, but by design. In hot months, people would actually mist their bedding. Light sprinkles of water turned those bamboo mats into poor man's air conditioning. Humid? Absolutely. Refreshing? If you squint hard enough. Plus, no mosquitoes, if you were lucky. If you weren't, well, more on that during the bamboo section. And this wasn't just a summer strategy. The elite had special cooling beds designed with airflow channels built into the wooden slats. Some had hollow legs that allowed for airflow from below. One particularly clever design even featured small wells of water beneath the bed platform to keep air circulating upward.
Basically, ancient engineering said, let's keep you half frozen so your yang energy doesn't throw a temper tantrum. But here's where things get even cooler, figuratively and literally. Jade headrests weren't only a flex, they were functional. Jade is naturally cold to the touch and was believed to ward off fevers and keep the spirit from overheating during REM stage dreams. There's even a charming little anecdote of a Tang Dynasty noblewoman who claimed she could sleep through a heat wave because her jade headrest was blessed by the moon. Or maybe she just had incredible neck muscles. Of course, scholars still argue whether these cooling techniques were actually effective, or if everyone just agreed to suffer elegantly in silence. Were those airflow beds practical, or just wishful thinking in an era that hadn't invented fans? Historians debate, mostly from the comfort of their ergonomically adjustable desk chairs. Fringe detail incoming. Some households, particularly Taoist-leaning ones, believed that keeping your body cold at night helped seal in longevity. Warmth was associated with decay and overexertion. Chill, on the other hand, signaled restraint and purity. Sleeping cold wasn't just a habit, it was a philosophical statement, like wearing linen in winter to feel the hardship. So here you are, lying flat on a damp mat, your head resting on moon-cooled porcelain, your internal organs apparently giving each other a thumbs up. And for a moment, the stillness wraps around you like a silk robe dipped in starlight. Not soft, not cozy, but balanced. Perfectly, cosmically, cold. You're beginning to sense a pattern here, right? Sleep wasn't just about not being awake. It was a test, a ritual, a reflection of who you were, or more accurately, who you should be. And if you were one of the elite thinkers of ancient China, a disciple of Confucius himself, then yes, even bedtime came with homework. Now stretch out a little, carefully, and imagine you're a Confucian scholar in the middle of the Han Dynasty. You've spent the day transcribing classics, quoting analects, and reminding your students that filial piety is the ultimate virtue. And now it's nighttime, and you do what any dignified, morally upright academic would do. Lie on a bed that could double as a dining table, and cradle your head on a glorified roof tile. See, to the Confucian mind, austerity was not just admirable, it was necessary. Softness was indulgence. Comfort bred laziness. Sleep itself was fine, sure, but only if it served a higher purpose. Rest the body, yes, but only so the mind could rise even stronger in the morning to resume its relentless pursuit of virtue. That's why scholar beds were famously austere. Narrow, hard, devoid of ornament unless the ornament symbolized discipline. If there was a canopy, it wasn't to feel royal, it was to keep distractions out. That jade headrest, not for comfort, but to cool your thoughts, reduce desire, and keep your spirit still. No toss, no turn, just stoicism in linen form. You might even sleep at a specific angle. Yes, there were suggested sleep angles to promote correct bodily flow and dream clarity. It wasn't enough to drift off. You had to sleep with intention. A bedtime so morally upright, it could probably write its own essay. Now, let's talk hygiene. A Confucian gentleman would cleanse before bed, not with soaps or scented oils, but with warm water and sometimes medicinal herbs. It wasn't pampering. It was about respect, for self, for family, for the ancestors. Dirty feet in a shared bed? Scandalous. Showing up to the afterlife in dusty socks? Absolutely not. But it wasn't just about physical discipline. Sleep itself was seen as a moment to refine the mind. If your dreams were erratic, it suggested moral imbalance. The headrest, then, became almost a co-teacher, its firmness nudging your thoughts into better order, its chill tempering your fiery impulses. A fluffy pillow would be like reading trash scrolls before an imperial exam. Unthinkable. Of course, some scholars today wonder if all this righteousness translated to actual rest. Historians still argue whether Confucian sleep habits led to healthier lives or just made everyone grumpy at sunrise. There are no surviving dream journals titled, "I slept on bamboo and loved it," after all. And here's your quirky tidbit. A few Confucian students were known to sleep with small wooden blocks under their sides, not for posture, but to prevent rolling over. That's right, if you were tempted to shift in the night and risk breaking your ascetic streak, your bed would gently jab you back into virtue. Sleep training, Confucian style. So here you are now, perfectly still, posture sharp as a calligraphy stroke, breathing as slow and measured as a tea ceremony. You're not just sleeping, you're cultivating character, one stiff vertebra at a time.
The air shifts slightly, and you feel it. A ghost of warmth wrapping itself around your legs, then slowly rising up your back like a whispered promise. Except this time, it's not a ghost. It's the Kong, ancient China's answer to winter, sleep, and central heating, all rolled into one toasty brick beast of a bed. Let's paint the scene. You're in northern China now. The winters bite, the winds don't mess around, and that wooden mat from earlier? Yeah, it's in hibernation. Up here, beds become engineering feats. The Kong is a raised platform, often the length of the entire wall, made of stone or brick, and connected to the flue of a household stove. During the day, it's a sitting area. At night, it turns into a full-body radiator. All it needs is a bit of coal or wood burning in the belly of the home, and voila, warmth distributed evenly through the platform beneath your sleepy bones. You stretch out, and the mat laid over the Kong is thin enough to let the heat seep up, but thick enough to stop you from burning yourself. It's the ancient equivalent of just right on the thermostat. Forget electric blankets. This was radiant heat before radiant heat was cool. What's more, these weren't solo experiences. Families would pile onto the Kong together. Children, parents, even a visiting cousin who overstayed their welcome. It wasn't weird, it was efficient. Heat was precious. Privacy was less so. You learned early how to ignore someone snoring within 2 feet of your ear. And the headrest? Still there. Maybe even warmer than usual tonight, thanks to the Kong's gentle upward heat. A ceramic curve that now radiates comfort in a still feels like a glazed roof tile sort of way. There are still arguments among scholars today about how widespread Kong beds were and whether they caused long-term health benefits or quietly roasted the nation's spleens. But one thing is clear. They were adored. Even emperors praised their warmth. Ming Dynasty records show lavishly decorated Kongs in royal retreats, complete with silk canopies and dragon motifs, because obviously your heat source should also remind you you're divine. Fringe tidbit time. Some households used chili peppers beneath the Kong platform, not to spice up dinner, but to enhance the warmth. The belief was that the scent of the chili, when gently baked by the Kong's heat, would purify the air and energize the blood. In other words, ancient aromatherapy with a kick. Still, no heat source is without quirks. Improperly managed Kongs could fill homes with smoke, or worse, carbon monoxide. There are tales, slightly singed ones, of people forgetting to open the flue, waking up woozy, or with their blankets smoldering. So, yes, toasty dreams with a hint of danger, like a sleepover on hard mode. But you, tonight,
are safe. The Kong breathes steady beneath you, warm like a sunbeam caught in stone. You're not cushioned exactly, but you're definitely not cold. And for once, you feel content. Toasty, but disciplined. As though your virtue is being gently simmered along with your calves. Close your eyes. Let the warmth carry you, not like a wave, but like an ember glowing low and eternal.
You open your eyes to a new texture beneath you, softer than wood, but not by much. It whispers as you shift, making that faint straw-on-straw sigh that only natural fibers can produce. Tonight, you're sleeping low to the ground, and your bed, well, it's a mat. A good old-fashioned woven mat. And depending on your social status, it's either a testament to practicality or a reluctant compromise with gravity. In much of ancient China, especially during the warmer seasons, floor sleeping was the norm. Rich, poor, somewhere in between. People rolled out mats made from bamboo, rushes, rattan, or even fine grass, each with its own charm. Let's go with charm. The most common? Woven bamboo mats. Cool, durable, and whisper-thin, they were beloved for their ability to let air circulate and wick moisture away. You'd lie down on one and instantly feel the heat leach from your body, as if the mat itself were a sleepy vampire with a temperature fetish. But not all mats were created equal. If you were a common farmer, yours might be scratchy and hastily woven. Functional, sure, but not exactly bedtime luxury. If you were wealthy, you might sleep on a mat so finely crafted, so smooth, that it felt like silk-covered scaffolding. The ultimate, thanks, I hate it, combination of elegance and zero cushioning. And speaking of zero cushioning, pillows? Still MIA. But the mat had its own logic. You weren't meant to sink in. You were meant to float. Metaphorically. On firmness. On principle. On something that could also be used for a picnic without anyone noticing. The sensory experience of these mats is unforgettable. Cool in summer, creaky under movement, and prone to catching your hair if you weren't careful. In humid regions, they were lightly moistened before sleep to enhance the cooling effect. Yes, moist mats strike again. And if you were really unlucky, they might also host a few surprise roommates. Fleas, ants, or worst case scenario, a confused cricket that mistook your bedtime for karaoke night. Of course, some would double up, laying cloth or hemp bedding over the mat to soften it slightly. But again, too much softness. That was suspicious, especially if you were a man of character. You had to earn your comfort, ideally sometime after death. Scholars still argue whether these mats contributed to better spinal alignment or simply normalized lifelong back pain. There's an entire camp of experts who believe the human body adapts beautifully to firm, minimally invasive sleep surfaces if raised with them. Then there's another camp, quietly sobbing into orthopedic memory foam pillows. Fringe alert. In some Taoist practices, special herbs like mugwort were woven directly into the mats for spiritual and medicinal benefit. The idea was that as you slept, the herbs would release healing properties through your pores. So yes, you were marinating in therapy. Holistic burrito style. As you lie here now, bamboo creaking beneath you like an old fisherman's boat, something shifts. The floor doesn't feel like punishment anymore. It's grounding. Literal, yes, but also mental. A return to basics, simplicity, stability. You breathe in the earthy smell of dried reed and summer air. No springs, no coils. Just you
the mat, and a quiet kind of peace. And maybe one cricket quietly chirping its approval from somewhere near your shin.
You're beginning to get used to it. That firm press against your back, the unyielding curve beneath your neck, the creaky mat with the personality of its own. And maybe, just maybe, you're wondering, was this actually good for people? Or did an entire civilization just collectively decide that comfort was for amateurs? Let's talk headrests again. Because yes, we're still not calling them pillows. By now, you know the standard drill. Ceramic, jade, wood, maybe bamboo if you're feeling flexible. But what did people really get out of balancing their dreams on something that could double as a blunt weapon? Well, depends on who you ask. Traditional Chinese medicine held firm beliefs that a cooler, harder sleep surface promoted circulation, calmed internal fire, and preserved life energy. The firm headrest in particular was praised for keeping the neck aligned and preventing qi from pooling incorrectly at the base of the skull, because of course your qi has opinions about real estate. Proponents of these stone cradles claimed benefits like improved digestion, clearer dreams, and better posture. Modern wellness influencers would call it intentional sleeping. But let's be real, there's intentional, and then there's voluntarily resting your temple on a brick and calling it self-care. The modern scholarly community? Not as unified. Historians still argue whether headrests truly delivered health advantages or if people were simply too polite to admit they hated them. There's no definitive ancient Yelp review titled "Porcelain Pillow, 1 star, neck betrayed." But absence of complaints doesn't necessarily equal endorsement. Anthropologists have compared skeletal remains from different burial sites, analyzing neck vertebrae, joint wear, and spine curvature in hopes of revealing whether long-term headrest use shaped the body in measurable ways. The findings? Inconclusive. Some show remarkable posture preservation, others suggest people just learn to live with chronic tension, which, to be fair, is kind of the ancient human condition. Here's your quirky tidbit. There were animal-shaped headrests. That's right. Archaeologists have dug up ceramic neck props shaped like lions, tigers, ducks, and even mythological creatures. Some had open mouths for airflow, others were engraved with protective talismans or lullaby poems. Imagine going to sleep with your head cradled by a grinning lion whispering, "Sweet dreams or else." It's adorable and mildly threatening. And in elite circles, there was even a fashion to collect headrests. A Tang Dynasty noblewoman might have a dozen, each for a different season, mood, or health concern. Oh, this one's for when I've eaten too many dumplings, and this, my melancholy headrest. But perhaps the strangest part is this. Over time, the discomfort faded from conversation. It wasn't about comfort, it was about the ritual. Lying down each night became a return to values, a recommitment to structure, an unconscious bow to order and tradition. In this world, to rest one's head on something soft might be seen as indulgence, even moral slippage. And so, as your neck settles deeper into the porcelain curve tonight, you realize maybe it wasn't about sleep quality. Maybe it was about sleeping in a way that made you feel worthy of waking up. No memory foam, no hotel-grade fluff, just a beautiful, cold, curved reminder that even in dreams, dignity never takes a break.
Tonight, your dreams feel different, lighter somehow, but not in that floating on a cloud way, more like you've wandered into an ancient scroll painting with ink-washed mountains, cranes mid-flight, and a strange awareness that every image means something, if only your subconscious had a translator. Because in ancient China, dreams weren't just dreams. They were messages, signals.
early morning diagnostics of your body, your mind, and sometimes your fate. You didn't just sleep to rest, you slept to interpret. Imagine waking up from a restless night and saying, "I dreamed of fire and chickens." In our world, that's brunch and indigestion. But in Han Dynasty thought, that could mean liver imbalance, reproductive heat, or unresolved family tensions. Fun. Doctors, sages, and mystics kept records of dream symbols and their associated meanings. A white horse running west, good fortune. A dog barking in a temple, possible betrayal. A snake in your bed? Okay, yeah, even they agreed that was bad, both symbolically and literally. And let's not forget the role of yin and yang. Dreaming was believed to occur when your shen, spirit, roamed freely while your body rested. If your yin was weak, your spirit might drift too far, getting lost or entangled in troubling images. That's why certain sleep setups, including those ceramic headrests, were designed to keep your soul anchored. Think of them as the ancient version of a spiritual seatbelt. Now, here's your weird fringe fact. Some people slept with a mirror under their bed to reflect wandering spirits back into the body come morning. Not creepy at all. Others placed peachwood talismans near the headrest to deter dream-invading demons or emotional turbulence, which, if we're being honest, sounds like a great excuse to blame your nightmares on ghost traffic. So what does this mean for you, dreamer of the 21st century? It means that tonight your dreams aren't random. That porcelain pillow, it's your transmitter. That chill creeping up from the mat, your tuning frequency. And that weird dream about a moon-shaped dumpling that keeps running away from you? Possibly kidney imbalance. Or maybe just a late-night snack craving. Of course, not all ancient dream interpreters agreed. Historians still argue whether dream symbolism truly came from established doctrine or was made up on the spot by board officials and overzealous healers. Some texts contradict each other entirely. One manual says dreaming of falling means death. Another says it means promotion. So, fingers crossed? Even emperors paid attention to their dreams. Tang Emperor Taizong once summoned his advisors because he dreamed of a red dragon circling his bed. After some very serious scroll flipping and chin stroking, they concluded it meant prosperity, or possibly indigestion. Either way, he felt better. And that's the thing, ancient Chinese dream logic was part science, part poetry, and part cosmic roulette. But it mattered. You didn't brush off a dream like a piece of lint. You pondered it, shared it, wondered what the universe was trying to say through a night of metaphorical nonsense. So tonight, as you nestle your skull against a glorified ceramic Wi-Fi router for the astral plane, know that you're not just sleeping. You're dialing into something bigger. Maybe your liver is whispering advice. Maybe your ancestors are checking in. Or maybe you just really want that dumpling. Either way, don't forget to remember what you see, because come morning, it could be prophecy or just peachwood-induced nonsense.
The room is quiet, eerily so, but not in a spooky way. It's the hush of stories long settled into the grain of wood, of secrets whispered between generations, and of dreams clinging to rafters like incense smoke. You shift your head slightly, still on that elegant porcelain neck-wrecker, and your fingers brush the edge of the bed frame. It's smooth, but carved. Tonight, we're lying on a bed that tells a story. Ancient Chinese bed frames, particularly among the upper classes, were not just functional, they were ornate, expressive, and sometimes deeply symbolic. You weren't just lying down, you were reclining inside a narrative. Rich wood, like Wang Wuli or Zitan, was shaped into sprawling scenes of mountains, rivers, mythological beasts, and moral tales. Every spindle, Every panel, every curve had intention. Lean in close. See that relief carved along the footboard? It might be a phoenix chasing a pearl. That's not just a pretty bird. That's a symbol of virtue and grace. The pearl? A stand-in for wisdom. It's like falling asleep inside a bedtime story written in timber. Of course, not every bed frame was a wooden novel. Simpler families made do with low platforms or rope-strung cots. But where money flowed, craftsmanship followed. Artisans would spend months, sometimes years, on a single bed frame for a noble family, embedding tiny inlaid pieces of jade, shell, or ivory. It wasn't just furniture, it was legacy. You might also find inscriptions burned into the wood, quotes from the Analects, perhaps, or sleepy poetry meant to inspire peace. One translated verse from a Song Dynasty bed frame reads, "Beneath this moonlit wood, let thoughts untie and rest be honest." And honestly, that hits harder than any sleep tracking app. But because ancient people never did things halfway, there were superstitions baked into these bedtime masterpieces too. Some believed that specific wood types like camphor or cedar warded off spirits and pests. Others swore by beds that faced certain directions, aligning with feng shui principles to optimize dream energy flow and minimize ghostly visitations, because nothing kills a nap like a ghostly side eye. Here's your fringe moment. Certain beds were constructed with hidden compartments, not just for storing jewelry or letters, but protective charms. One Qing-era bed was found with a tiny pouch sewn under the main beam, containing dried orange peels, salt, and a scrap of red silk. Why? Because someone's grandmother was not taking chances with malevolent dream demons, that's why. But back to you. Your fingers trace the swirls of wood again, following a curling cloud motif as it disappears beneath your hand. There's something grounding about it. This isn't IKEA. This is memory, legacy, the craftsmanship of someone who knew that sleep was sacred and that stories could live in furniture as much as in scrolls. Still, modern scholars disagree on how much of this was for comfort and how much was ceremonial fluff. Historians still argue whether carved symbolism had practical effects on dream content or emotional health, or if it just looked nice while you awkwardly adjusted your hips on a mat that's whispering, "Deal with it." But in this moment, you're lying inside a work of art, a chamber of intention, a space not just built for rest, but for meaningful rest. You're not just dozing. You're participating in an ancient bedtime tradition that's one part bedtime, one part bedtime fable. Close your eyes. Let the wood cradle your thoughts, the stories settle in your chest, and the silence remind you that sometimes the bed is the story.
You wake, but not alone. No, don't panic, no one's broken in. But this time, your bed isn't just your bed. Because in much of ancient China, sleeping solo was something of a luxury or even a strangeness. Tonight, you're sharing. Slide over gently. That body beside you? Probably your sibling. Maybe your grandmother. Perhaps your cousin visiting for the rice harvest. Welcome to the world of communal sleep, where beds weren't private and bedtime came with a side of family dynamics. Now, let's set the scene. A single Kang platform stretches along the back wall, broad and warm from the coal fire beneath it. The whole family clusters together, each person with their own mat or quilt, but not necessarily their own space. You didn't sprawl, you aligned. Bodies side by side, breath sinking into the soft rhythm of night. The idea of sleeping alone in your room would have been laughably foreign. Bedrooms weren't always separated by age or gender. Privacy, nice in theory, not high on the priority list when you've got 6 people in a 2-room home and it's below freezing outside. Heat, and let's be honest, togetherness was the real luxury.
And it wasn't just the poor. Even wealthy families slept communally at times. Servants might rest in the same room as their masters. Wet nurses shared quarters with infants and aristocratic mothers. Sometimes you were on the kang with your whole generation. Other times you were curled at the foot of someone else's mat, careful not to bump the bronze incense burner glowing softly near your ankles. And yes, there was gossip, whispered chatter long after the lanterns were blown out, family business, dreams half-remembered, funny things that the dog did that afternoon. Falling asleep while listening to your aunt tell you about her prophetic dream involving goats, peak ancient sleepover energy. But there were rules. You didn't turn abruptly. You didn't hog the covers. And for the love of the Jade Emperor, you did not snore. If you did, someone's slipper was coming for you at dawn. Interestingly, some households used low dividers or hanging curtains around shared beds, not so much for privacy, but for airflow and symbolic separation. These weren't thick enough to block sound or light, but they created the illusion of solitude, like pulling a sheer veil between you and your sister, who is still giggling about the neighbor's ox farting during market day. Fringe detail? Some families assigned sleep spots based on feng shui. The eldest might sleep nearest the head of the kang, considered the most auspicious place, while the youngest slept near the feet, closest to the door. It wasn't just hierarchy, it was energy flow. Your position could influence your fortune or your frequency of being stepped on during midnight potty runs. Of course, scholars debate whether communal sleep promoted emotional bonding or simply normalized insomnia. Historians still argue whether this closeness strengthened family ties or gave rise to a deep national tolerance for snoring and night fidgeting. Tonight, though, you shift slightly, feeling the warmth of another human beside you. It's unfamiliar, yes, a little awkward, maybe, but it's also comforting. Ancient warmth without electricity, a shared stillness passed down like bedtime itself. So breathe deeply. You're not just lying down with people. You're lying down in tradition, in history, in a culture that saw sleep as something to be shared. And if someone kicks you in their dreams, well, at least you're dreaming together.
There's a dull clink as your head shifts slightly, and you realize this headrest isn't ceramic tonight. It's something else. Heavier, denser, cooler than cool. You lift it gently, peering at the smooth surface glinting faintly in the lantern glow, and then it hits you. Tonight, your pillow is jade. Welcome to the deluxe suite of ancient Chinese sleep, where your head doesn't just rest, it reigns. If earlier nights were about discipline and balance, this one is pure status flex. Luxury headrests weren't just for support, they were wearable wealth for your skull. Jade headrests were rare, expensive, and carved with astonishing precision. Owning one meant you were somebody, or at least related to somebody. The stone's natural chill was thought to soothe the mind and body, balance hot emotions, and even delay aging. You weren't just getting a nap, you were getting a celestial facial. And jade wasn't the only high-end material in town. Some headrests were crafted from ivory, which, setting aside our modern ethical red flags, was prized for its creamy texture and mythical healing properties. Bronze, too, made a solid appearance in noble households. Yes, your neck might have been resting on the same material used to make weapons and ritual bells. Sleep with dignity and acoustics. Then there's bone, less common but still present in certain tomb finds, especially during the Warring States period. Bone headrests were often polished and carved, sometimes fashioned from animal remains thought to impart protection or strength. Imagine cradling your dreams on the ancestral femur of a buffalo. Sleep tight, friend. And here's your fringe delight. In a few isolated cases, scholars have found glass headrests, not mass-produced, not widespread, but clearly experimental. Maybe someone wanted to see their own dreams reflected, or maybe they were just trying to invent sleep bling. Either way, let's pour one out for the poor soul who rolled too hard and got a forehead full of shattered ambition. These luxury headrests were also status symbols, displayed proudly like crown jewels of bedtime. Some were inscribed with poems, others with mantras or wishes for longevity. One particularly famous example from the Tang dynasty reads, "May the dreams of the righteous be sweet and the night's silence enduring." Sounds poetic, slightly ironic given the thing it's etched on could knock you out cold with a nudge. And these weren't just for show. Wealthy families passed them down through generations, heirlooms of the night, gifts at weddings, symbols of commitment that said, "I love you, so here's a beautiful slab for your dreams. Don't drop it." But don't get it twisted. Just because it was expensive didn't mean it was comfortable. Scholars still argue whether jade headrests actually provided any neck relief, or if people just convinced themselves pain was prestigious, because nothing says "I've made it" like voluntarily resting on a green rock shaped like a capital letter D. You settle your head back down on the cold, luxurious surface. It's absurdly firm, sure, but there's something grounding about it. Something that whispers, "You are safe. You are important. You may not be cozy, but you are elevated." So relax. Tonight, you're not just sleeping. You're displaying. You're the gallery. You're the artifact. And if your dreams include a little neck cramp, that's just the price of opulence.
You're snuggled in now, or, well, as snuggled as one can be while lying on something that doubles as sculpture. But just as you start drifting into a blissful half-dream about dumplings flying through the sky, a new sensation creeps in. Something grimier, stickier. The creeping suspicion that hygiene in ancient China wasn't exactly pristine. And you'd be right. Tonight, we pull back the silk curtain on the not-so-glamorous side of ancient bedtime. Hygiene horrors that would have your modern self dry-heaving into your herbal tea. Let's start with the basics. Bathing. Or, more accurately, not bathing. Regular washing wasn't always the norm, especially in colder months or rural regions. Soap, as we know it, wasn't in circulation for most dynasties. Instead, people used herbal washes, infusions of mugwort, lotus leaves, or peach blossoms, rubbed onto the skin and then wiped off with a damp cloth, which, yes, sounds nice, but now picture that instead of a shower for 3 weeks. Clothing? Probably slept in it. Or if you were fancy, maybe you changed into a hemp or silk nightrobe. But either way, you likely didn't scrub down beforehand. And if you were a laborer or farmer, that's right, day's sweat just rolled over into night's crust. Sweet dreams. And don't even ask about the bed linens. The very concept of regularly changing bedding was not universal. While elites might have attendants to swap mats or dust off the headrest, common folks just let the mat marinate until the seasons changed. You could, however, sprinkle dried herbs into the bedding to mask smells and balance qi. Lavender, if you were rich. Onion skins, if you were not. Here's a cheeky little fringe tidbit. Some sleepers wore bedtime socks soaked in vinegar. Why? It was thought to draw out internal heat through the soles of the feet. Also, possibly to fumigate the room and chase off suitors. Historians still aren't sure if it worked, but we can safely assume it didn't smell like a spa. To make things worse, pest control was minimal. Mosquito nets existed but were luxury items. Most folks dealt with fleas, lice, and bed bugs the old-fashioned way, by scratching and sighing deeply. Some even sprinkled crushed mint or ash around their mats to ward off insects. Did it work? Kinda. Did it get messing? Oh, absolutely. Now, not everyone just gave up. In cities, bathhouses offered steamy refuge, and cleanliness became more common among urban elites. But in rural areas, you might go weeks without a full wash, especially in winter. Cleanliness was less about sparkle and more about balance. If your internal systems were pure, your external grime was spiritually irrelevant. Sort of like saying, "My soul is clean, so don't mind the dirt under my nails."
Modern scholars continue to debate whether these herbal routines provided genuine sanitation or were mostly symbolic. Historians still argue whether sleep cleanliness was effective or if everyone was just immune from a lifetime of low-level filth. Spoiler: ancient immune systems were probably forged in the fires of bacterial war. Tonight, though, you lie still, breathing in the faint earthy scent of mugwort and mat. You're a little skeptical, maybe a little itchy, but oddly enough, the simplicity is calming. There's a kind of peace in knowing that you don't have to be spotless to be serene, that sleep doesn't demand perfection, just surrender. So, exhale. Let the day's dust settle. You're not dirty, you're historically immersive.
You're finally cozy, relatively speaking, curled in your quilt like a seasoned time traveler. But as you glance around your dimly lit room, something becomes very clear. Not everyone was sleeping on bamboo mats and vinegar socks. No, no. Some people had beds that looked like they'd been personally commissioned by moon gods. Because in ancient China, your bed wasn't just where you slept, it was a status symbol. Let's talk bed hierarchy. At the bottom, the humble floor mat. Durable, practical, quietly judgmental. You, your family, maybe the family goat all curled up nearby, maybe a mosquito net if you were lucky, or a piece of cheesecloth pretending to be one. But climb the social ladder, and suddenly things start to look a little fancier. Bed platforms grew taller, often raised off the ground with elegant wooden legs. This wasn't just for style. It kept you away from dirt, dampness, and the occasional crawling critter that didn't know bedtime boundaries. And the materials? Oh, the materials. Rich folks didn't settle for pine. Their beds were carved from zitan, huanghuali, or camphor wood. Aromatic, rare, and expensive enough to spark jealousy even in death. Seriously, some people were buried with their beds just to flex in the afterlife. The more elite you were, the more outrageous your sleep setup became. Think tall, four-poster canopy beds with silk curtains, intricate mother-of-pearl inlays, side tables crafted from polished jade. If your bed didn't weigh as much as a small horse, were you even trying? And while the base mattered, so did what sat on top of it. Wealthy households flaunted cushions embroidered with gold thread, summer sleeping mats woven from exotic reeds, and quilts stuffed with rare bird down. Heads rested on finely glazed ceramic pillows shaped like lotus blossoms or jade blocks etched with dragons chasing pearls. One surviving Ming Dynasty bed frame has over 400 carvings on it, tiny vignettes of daily life, fables, and spiritual symbols. The message? Even when I sleep, I'm better than you. Fringe moment. Some noble families commissioned bed chariots. Yes, you read that right. Miniature wheeled beds that could be moved from room to room, mostly for infants and toddlers, but occasionally for spoiled adults who wanted their nap spot to follow the sunlight. Because reclining in gold-threaded pajamas is much better when bathed in late afternoon glow. But the bed wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a space to conduct business, receive guests in private quarters, or even meditate. The more decorated and massive the bed, the more power it projected. Some even had built-in screens and alcoves where incense would be placed to waft just the right fragrance while you pretended to sleep peacefully and not think about succession drama. Of course, historians still argue whether these elaborate beds truly brought better sleep or just better bragging rights. Did the elite actually rest more soundly, or did they just wake up smug? And how did those silk drapes feel at 3 a.m. when the incense burned out and the dog wouldn't stop barking? Tonight, as you lie back on your less than regal mat, you feel it. A whisper of longing, maybe not for gold thread or wheeled beds, but for the quiet power of something beautiful, something meaningful.
because even if your back's a little sore and your pillow is still suspiciously shaped like a soup bowl, there's something timeless about sleep when it's framed in pride. So breathe deep. You may not be royalty, but tonight, your dreams are noble.
Your hand drifts once again to the cool arc beneath your neck. Tonight's headrest doesn't hum with jade energy or bronze bravado. It's something humbler, but no less striking. Smooth, white, firm as a moral compass. Yep, your skull is officially supported by porcelain. Welcome to the crown jewel of hard sleeping, the porcelain pillow. Elegant, fragile, and determined to make you question every choice that led to this moment. Let's talk form first. These weren't boring blocks. Ancient Chinese porcelain headrests came in fantastical shapes: arched bridges, flowing scrolls, stylized animals, and lotus flowers. Some were painted with sweeping ink scenes, bamboo forests, dancing cranes, koi plum blossoms. Others carried moral tales, reminding you between dreams that virtue sleeps lightly. One particularly famous piece from the Song Dynasty depicts two children chasing butterflies across a garden. Cute? Absolutely. But also a subtle reminder to stay pure, innocent, and very still unless you want a face full of ceramic at 2 a.m. And why porcelain? Beyond the aesthetic flex, it was believed to retain coolness, essential for calming inner heat and promoting mental clarity. If jade was the philosopher's stone of sleep, porcelain was the scholar's moonbeam, clean, controlled, glorious in its indifference to your comfort. Porcelain was also believed to absorb impure energies, kind of like a spiritual Brita filter under your head. You'd wake up not just mentally refreshed, but cosmically detoxed, or so the theory went. But here's your scholarly fun fact. Historians still argue whether these headrests were genuinely used nightly or mostly ceremonial. Some claim they were only for special occasions, weddings, funerals, or to accompany the dead in their tombs. Others insist they were everyday items, treasured like fine dinnerware and used just as often. The truth? Probably both. People had good pillows and everyday ones. You know, like your grandma's dishes. Fringe tidbit time. Porcelain headrests were sometimes given as dowry gifts. That's right. Congratulations on your marriage. Here's a beautifully painted object that will ruin your sleep, but preserve your chastity. Because yes, these weren't just neck supports, they were virtue enforcers. The hard surface was thought to discourage movement, any kind of movement. Wink. Some were even inscribed with warnings. One surviving headrest reads, "With clear dreams, a pure heart rests." Translation, if you're having nightmares, maybe rethink your choices, buddy. And for the record, these were heavy. Knock one off the bed, and you weren't waking up peacefully. You were waking up to a cracked tile, a bruised ego, and maybe a ghostly ancestor muttering, "This is why we can't have nice things." But as you lie here, letting your head sink ever so slightly into that impossibly firm porcelain dip, something surprising happens. You start to appreciate it. The way the coolness clings to your skin, the way the rigidity demands stillness. It's not plush, but it is present. It holds you like an idea, unbending, perfect, slightly dangerous. So go ahead, embrace the elegance. Pretend you're a Song Dynasty scholar with calligraphy-stained fingers and too many thoughts. Let the porcelain cradle you into that strange in-between where form meets function and dreams get printed in blue and white glaze. You stir slightly, the cool porcelain refusing to offer even a whisper of softness.
But by now, your body's adjusted. Sort of. You've reached that sleepy equilibrium where resistance fades and your spine finally says, "Fine, we'll do it your way." Tonight, though, we're traveling. Not in dreams, but across dynasties. Because sleep in ancient China wasn't static. It evolved. Slowly, quietly, like a snore building in intensity. Let's start with the Han Dynasty, around 200 BCE. Picture this. Confucian values are becoming the blueprint of daily life, and that includes how one sleeps. Rigid moral codes? Check. Beds that double as life lessons? Absolutely. Sleeping surfaces were mostly wooden or stone platforms, and headrests were already hard, lacquered wood or early ceramic prototypes. Think sleep like a sage rather than sleep like a cloud. Fast forward to the Tang Dynasty, and things start getting spicy, literally and metaphorically. Trade along the Silk Road is booming, bringing new materials and ideas. Silk bedding becomes more common for the wealthy. Jade headrests hit their peak popularity. The sleep aesthetic is both ornate and functional, because when you're entertaining Persian diplomats and composing poetry at midnight, you deserve a lotus-shaped porcelain pillow. Then comes the Song Dynasty, a time of refinement and scholarship. Bed frames now feature intricate carvings, mosquito nets are more widespread, and sleeping arrangements take on symbolic significance. Headrests become true art pieces, often gifted or passed down. Because nothing says inheritance like a neck wedge shaped like a crouching tiger. By the Ming Dynasty, we see the rise of the opium bed. Not quite the bedtime story you expected, huh? Yes, these beds were large, canopied, and designed for reclining, resting, and occasionally partaking in less than virtuous pastimes. Carved panels, silk drapery, and side tables built into the frame weren't uncommon. Basically, a bed you could live your whole life in if you didn't have things like taxes or morals. And then there's the Qing Dynasty, where things get even more ornate. If earlier dynasties had beds, the Qing had bedrooms as performance art. Canopies dripped in embroidery. Pillows were still hard, but at least they were beautiful. Some beds had internal altars or shadow puppetry screens so you could fall asleep to stories projected by candlelight. Netflix? Please. They had shadow bunnies and candle-powered cinema. Despite all these aesthetic shifts, the essentials remained the same. Firmness over fluff, symbolism over softness. Even as the dynasties rose and fell, the philosophy around sleep persisted. It wasn't just about closing your eyes. It was about alignment, of body, of spirit, of dynasty-approved decor. Now, historians still argue whether these evolutions improved sleep quality. Did the Qing dynasty silk canopy actually reduce mosquito bites? Did the Tang jade pillow really help with insomnia? Or was it all just a slow, beautiful slide into decorative neck pain? Hard to say. Here's your fringe moment. In the late Qing dynasty, certain beds came with hidden musical instruments embedded in the frame. Soft chimes would play as you moved, thought to soothe the sleeper or drive away bad spirits. Or maybe they just wanted to know when the kid was sneaking out. Tonight, you rest in a composite dream. a bed born from centuries of intention and revision. Each dynasty layering another brushstroke on the canvas of Chinese sleep. You are quite literally lying in history. So, close your eyes and listen, not for dreams, but for echoes of dynasties that shaped the night long before bedtime ever came with a snooze button.
Your dreams tonight swirl with jade-green mists and strange twinkling constellations, like someone spilled stardust over a philosopher's notebook. And as your head nestles once again into the firm curve of mineral wealth, you suddenly remember, ah yes, tonight we're sleeping like an alchemist emperor, one who believed that the right headrest could unlock the secrets of eternal life. Let's talk about the pillow of immortality. During the Tang and Song dynasties especially, a wave of Taoist alchemy swept through imperial courts. Emperors, nobles, and scholarly eccentrics became obsessed with the idea that the body could be preserved, perfected, maybe even rendered eternal, if only you slept right, breathed right, and consumed the occasional powdered mercury smoothie. Spoiler, don't try that. Among these immortality pursuits was the jade pillow, no longer just a sleep aid, but a divine conduit. Jade, revered for millennia in Chinese culture, was considered the stone of heaven, capable of drawing out impurities and stabilizing the soul. If jade jewelry protected you by day, then a jade pillow would surely guard you in your most vulnerable state, sleep. And the big dreamer, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, infamous first emperor of a unified China and top-tier immortality enthusiast. Now, while there's debate over whether he personally used jade pillows, his mausoleum was filled with jade artifacts, including, yes, pillows and plugs meant to preserve the integrity of his divine body. Historians still argue whether these items were truly functional or simply symbolic gestures for the afterlife. Either way, they screamed, "I'm not going quietly." Other rulers and nobles followed suit. Alchemists swore that resting the head on jade could harmonize one's qi, regulate heat imbalances, and foster clearer dreams. Some pillows were even shaped like Taoist talismans, Bagua octagons, yin-yang curves, designed to trap or redirect cosmic energy while you snoozed. Sleep hygiene, but make it metaphysical. Fringe alert. One manuscript from the Song era claims a Taoist recluse slept exclusively on a dragon's blood-imbued jade pillow carved during a solar eclipse, said to bestow lucid dreaming and delay graying hair. Whether it worked? Well, let's just say no one's checked his hair lately. Of course, this wasn't just health, it was luxury. Only the wealthiest could afford a single chunk of pure nephrite jade large enough to craft a pillow. And it had to be polished smooth but not too slippery. No one wanted to wake up on the floor with half their key leaking out. Some even carved inscriptions into the jade, invoking long life, calm sleep, or divine visions. One surviving example simply reads, "To sleep without sorrow and rise without age." You have to admire the ambition. But let's be real. Lying on jade for hours, not the coziest, yet that didn't matter. Comfort was irrelevant if it meant inching closer to forever. If your dreams could reach into other realms, download cosmic secrets, and return you to the waking world a little wiser, wasn't that worth a stiff neck? So tonight, as your head rests on cool stone that hums with imagined power, you close your eyes like an emperor with too many scrolls and not enough time. You breathe in, you exhale, and for a moment, just a moment, you almost believe it, that sleep could preserve you, purify you, even transcend you. Just maybe skip the mercury.
Tonight, there's a gritty sensation beneath your head, like sandpaper with ambition. You lift your neck and, yup, That's not jade. That's salt. Welcome, brave sleeper, to the truly eyebrow-raising world of salt brick headrests, a fringe but very real footnote in ancient Chinese bedding lore. Let's start with the basics. Salt was valuable, really valuable. It preserved food, warded off evil, and apparently made a mean pillow. In some arid regions of Western China, especially among ethnic minority groups or trade-heavy towns along the Silk Road, compressed blocks of mineral-rich salt were occasionally used as headrests. Were they common? No. Were they weirdly practical? Also yes. Because salt has magical properties, you see. Not just in your dumplings, but in your dreams. It was believed to absorb negative energy, pull dampness out of the body, and even help regulate internal temperature. So if you were dealing with a fever, bad dreams, or just felt cosmically out of whack, a salt brick pillow was a one-stop shop for spiritual detox and a neck that felt like it had been kissed by a glacier. Now, before you get visions of Himalayan Pink's luxury blocks, these were rough, crude, crystalline, and lumpy. Lying on one was less restorative escape and more conscious recalibration through mild facial abrasion. But to believers, every ounce of discomfort was a healing gesture from the universe. And here's the real kicker. Some families licked their headrests. Yes, that's your fringe fact. Salt, being a precious commodity, was sometimes rationed through bedtime. A lick here, a pinch there, because nothing says good night like a midnight sodium fix. Granted, this was more of a fringe frontier practice, but records do suggest dual-purpose use, neck support and snack. Salt also served as a protective substance. It was thought to repel demons, curses, and misfortune. So placing your most vulnerable body part, your head, on a chunk of metaphysical security made sense, especially if you lived in a region where pestilence and spiritual hijinks were nightly concerns. Scholars today still blink twice at this one. Historians still argue whether salt brick pillows were symbolic, medicinal, or just the ancient equivalent of DIY gone too far. Some claim they were regional anomalies, while others insist the practice may have quietly spread among certain Taoist sects interested in bodily purification. Either way, there's no IKEA section for seasoned sleep support. You, meanwhile, lie back down, gingerly. There's a rough coolness to the salt. You imagine it drawing out toxins, recalibrating your fire element, maybe whispering cosmic secrets in the language of brine. The air smells faintly of minerals and, oddly, cured ham. Could be your imagination, could be the salt doing its thing. And strangely, it works. Your muscles release. Your breath evens out. You don't feel pampered, but you feel cleansed, like your body just passed a final exam it didn't study for. A+ in Spinal Resilience 101. So close your eyes and savor the strange. Tonight, you're not just sleeping. You're preserving. You're purifying. You're slowly becoming part of the most ancient recipe book ever written. 1 part sleep, 2 parts stubborn minerals, a dash of spiritual security. Sweet dreams, salty sleeper.
You're starting to notice a rhythm now, not just in the creaks of bamboo or the whisper of woven mats, but in the way every layer of ancient sleep was chosen, intentional. Even tonight's moment, when your fingers brush against your clothes and you realize, wait, These aren't pajamas. These are stiff. Welcome to the fashionably frugal world of ancient Chinese nightwear. Tonight you are clothed in sleepwear that is functional, symbolic, and, let's be honest, about as cozy as sandpaper origami. But stylish? Oh, in the right dynasty, absolutely. For most common folk, nightwear wasn't a separate category. You wore what you wore. Day clothes became night clothes, assuming they were clean enough or warm enough to keep you from freezing during the chillier seasons. That meant hemp tunics, rough linen wraps, and layered cotton if you were lucky. Forget satin boxers. We're talking the same cloth used for sacks. The phrase scratchy chic might have been invented right here. But climb the social ladder and suddenly things get fancy. The elite would change into robes made of silk, often unlined, flowing, and dyed in restful colors like blue, gray, or pale green. These sleeping robes were meant to promote serenity, balance internal energies, and frankly, look amazing even in candlelight. Silk draped like water, soothing, sensual, and surprisingly temperature regulating. It kept you cool in summer and warm in winter. Still not soft in a modern sense, but decadently whispery against the skin. Now here's your quirky detail. In some Taoist communities, nightwear wasn't just comfort, it was cosmic etiquette. Practitioners believed that what you wore to bed influenced your dreams. Loose garments allowed the spirit to travel freely, unencumbered by knots or tight sashes. Some even embroidered small auspicious symbols near the chest: lotuses for purity, cranes for long life, bats for good luck. Yes, bats equal lucky. Plot twist. In wealthier homes, embroidered slippers were placed at the bedside, because stepping out of bed barefoot? No, thank you. Cold floors were thought to stir dormant cold qi in the soles of the feet, leading to sluggish circulation and bad dreams. So even your toes had a bedtime dress code. But not everyone was dressing up to wind down. Soldiers, monks, and farmers might sleep in whatever they had on, wrapped in quilts or blankets instead of donning separate attire. Practicality ruled. If you were exhausted from field work or night patrol, chances are fashion wasn't a priority. Unless that fashion involved an extra layer between you and the family kang. Historians still argue whether ancient sleepwear truly impacted health or dreams, or if it was just another way to reinforce social status. Was the silk robe really a path to harmony, or just a soft flex before lights out? And now, you, draped in simple linen. Not itchy, exactly, but definitely textured. The weave catches on your elbow, your legs shift beneath the quilt. It's not loungewear, it's intent wear. You're wrapped in history, in practicality, in something that says, I may not be soft, but I mean rest. And here's the funny thing. It works. The predictability, the plainness, the knowledge that your clothes aren't trying to hug you, they're just there, like the mat beneath you, the headrest at your nape. Quiet companions. So pull the robe around you. Close your eyes. You're dressed not just for bed, but for balance. And maybe, just maybe, you look incredible while doing it.
You're breathing slow now, deep and even, but your mind is stirring, drifting into the peculiar space between myth and memory. Because in ancient China, a dream wasn't just your subconscious chasing dumplings down a hallway. No. Tonight, your dream might just carry the fate of a nation. Welcome to the realm where dreams became law, prophecy, and political chess pieces. It wasn't just peasants or poets who took dreams seriously. Emperors did too, and when they dreamed, the consequences could be epic. If an emperor dreamed of dragons circling the sun,
That could mean divine blessing. A tiger pacing a riverbank? A looming rebellion? A tooth falling out? Probably an ominous sign unless it was paired with a phoenix. The imperial court had official dream interpreters. Yes, that was a job title. These were Taoist priests, court scholars, and occasional charlatans who built careers on deciphering symbolic sleep. They kept dream manuals, scrolls upon scrolls filled with interpretations, entire dream lexicons where seeing a goat might signify peace, or fertility, or, if you dreamt it while facing north during the waxing moon, probably taxes. One emperor reportedly halted a military campaign because he dreamt of a dead ancestor weeping in red robes. He called off the invasion, held a purification ceremony, and then demanded to sleep on another headrest, preferably one less spiritually volatile. Because yes, even the furniture got blamed when the dreams went off script. And here's the wild part. These dreams were recorded, cataloged in the dynastic histories alongside real-world events. Wars, treaties, floods. Dreams. It wasn't just folklore, it was part of the empire's political DNA. Fringe moment? In one bizarre Han Dynasty case, an official used a dream interpretation as courtroom evidence. He claimed a dream involving a snake with a bell foretold the guilt of his rival. The emperor, unsure whether to laugh or be intrigued, ordered the rival exiled anyway, just to be safe. Because what if the dream was right? Now, back in the home, families paid attention too. A child dreaming of being chased by fire might be rushed to the herbalist the next morning for cooling teas and spirit-balancing acupuncture. A pregnant woman's dreams were especially scrutinized. If she dreamt of celestial animals, it was assumed her child would be gifted, or at least pass their exams. Of course, not all dreams had to be ominous or sacred. Some were considered messages from ancestors, a grandparent appearing in sleep with a quiet nod or cryptic advice. It was comforting, terrifying, and sometimes a little awkward, especially if the ancestor was very disappointed in your rice storage habits. Scholars today still debate the power of these dream prophecies. Historians argue whether they genuinely influenced decisions or were just retrofitted into the narrative after events unfolded. Did a war begin because of a tiger in the emperor's dream, or did scribes just add that detail later for dramatic flair? Still, as you lie here, wrapped in linen, chin resting on a talismanic headrest, you can't help but wonder, what might your dreams say tonight? Are you communing with ancient spirits? Predicting a shift in your chi alignment? Or just subconsciously reliving that weird incident with the duck cart earlier today? Whatever it is, don't dismiss it. Not here. Not in a world where dreams once held the weight of empires. So close your eyes. Drift into the clouded scroll of your own mind. Because in this place, your dreams are not just stories. They're statements.
You twitch a little in your sleep. Nothing dramatic, just a subconscious shrug. Maybe it's the faint itch along your ankle, or the subtle creak of the mat beneath you. Either way, tonight you're sharing your sacred sleep space with something alive. No, not a ghost, not a cousin. Worse, bugs. Because yes, even in the dignified hush of ancient Chinese bedrooms, there was no escaping the bedtime pest parade. And your best hope? Bamboo. Let's start with the basics. Beds, mats, and even some headrests were often made of bamboo, especially in southern China, where the weather liked to flirt with sauna as a daily forecast. Bamboo was cool to the touch, breathable, and dried quickly, making it a go-to material for both the humble and the highborn. But its real superpower? Bug resistance. You see, bugs aren't fans of bamboo, or at least not treated bamboo. People soaked it in vinegar or rubbed it down with aromatic herbs like mugwort, wormwood, or mint. The result? A mat that whispered, "Not today," to fleas and other midnight lurkers. Still, that didn't mean you were completely safe. Fleas were like ancient party crashers. Lice? Pretty much everyone's unwanted plus one. And bedbugs, those guys were practically furniture. If you didn't wash your linens or replace your mat regularly, which, let's be honest, most folks didn't, you might wake up with more than just dreams for company. So what did ancient sleepers do? Some laid rings of ash around their beds. Seriously, it was believed that crawling bugs wouldn't cross a powdery fire circle. Others burned incense, not just for peace, but for pest control. Sandalwood, clove, even bits of camphor resin went into ceramic burners placed at the foot of the bed, releasing smoke that smelled heavenly and, hopefully, scared the fleas. And your fringe fact tonight, some people slept with silkworm cocoons tucked into the corners of their bedding. Not because they were trendy throw pillows, but because they were believed to attract and trap negative energy, and, in some regions, repel insects. Whether it worked is anyone's guess, but hey, nothing like sleeping under the protective gaze of 30 ghost caterpillars. Also, for wealthier families, bed canopies weren't just fashion, they were functional. Draped in thick silk or gauzy linen, they hung around the bed like a gossamer fortress. Some were double-layered, one for mosquitoes, one for privacy. In especially buggy regions, these were a must. You're not royalty if you're swatting flies in your sleep. But not everyone had the luxury of canopies or herbal-laced bamboo. Many just learned to coexist, slap by day, scratch by night. Some families even kept tiny geckos or lizards near the bed. Natural pest control. No batteries required. Historians still argue whether bamboo bedding truly kept bugs at bay or if it just made the scratching more rhythmic. But the intent was there. And intent, as you know by now, meant everything in ancient China. So tonight, as you shift once more on your bamboo mat, think of the layers protecting you. Ash lines, fragrant smoke, and possibly a tiny lizard somewhere in the corner doing its part. You may not be alone, but you are defended. Sleep tight. Don't let the night watch gecko miss a spot.
You inhale deeply, and the air tastes of sandalwood and silk, light, refined, and just a bit too perfect to be coming from your modest mat. That's because tonight, you're no common sleeper. You've been invited, quietly, reverently, into the most exclusive sleep zone of all, the sacred sleep chamber of the imperial elite. This isn't just a bedroom, it's a statement, a sanctum, a throne room for dreaming. And believe me, when an emperor or empress lay down for the night, it wasn't on a flea-bitten mat with onion skin stuffing. No, it was inside a chamber so ornate it could have doubled as a set for a divine opera. Start with the canopy bed. Not the kind with a cute mosquito net. This thing was a literal architectural feature. 4 thick, carved posts, often lacquered in black and gold, supporting layers of embroidered silk panels. Dragons, phoenixes, cranes, the usual gang of imperial bedtime mascots. Some beds even had enclosed ceilings, so the sleeper wouldn't be disturbed by shadows, moonlight, or, heaven forbid, an ill-timed bat sighting. The bedding?
Think quilted brocade, stuffed with fine down, or even lotus silk. Yes, that's a thing. Lotus silk is made from the fibers inside lotus stems, which are then hand-spun into impossibly fine threads. It takes about 30 lotus stems to make a single meter, just enough for a throw pillow. And yes, emperors had that. Headrests, of course, were next level. Jade was common, but it was often custom-shaped to reflect the emperor's astrological sign, or engraved with protective mantras. Some even had tiny gold inlays, just in case your dreams needed a bit more bling. And the rituals? Oh, bedtime was not casual. Before sleep, an imperial sleeper might burn specific incense selected by a court Taoist. Some fragrances calmed the spirit, others promoted lucid dreaming. Some were meant to deter demons, naturally. Because it's not a true royal bedtime unless you've spiritually fumigated the place. Fringe time. One empress reportedly slept with a miniature gong near her pillow. If she awoke with a disturbing dream, or more likely, found her headrest off balance, she would tap the gong lightly, summoning a servant to flip the pillow, relight incense, or bring soothing tea. You know, just your standard 2 a.m. vibe check. These royal chambers also often included guardian objects, bronze mirrors to reflect evil spirits, peachwood swords tucked discreetly behind the headboard, and calligraphy scrolls reminding you to dream with integrity, which is probably more than your bedroom has to say, unless your poster collection includes sage wisdom. Still, historians debate how sacred these spaces truly were. Historians still argue whether these elaborate sleep rituals reflected sincere spiritual devotion or were mostly about imperial optics. Did the emperor really need 12 layers of mosquito netting embroidered with flying cranes? Or was he just showing off to visiting dignitaries? Unclear. What is clear, these chambers weren't just about sleep. They were about power, order, serenity through structure. Everything in place, every cent measured, every thread woven with intention. And the sleeper? Not just resting, recharging the mandate of heaven. So as you lie back tonight, even if your mat's a little scratchy and your pillow isn't gold-flaked, close your eyes and imagine a ceiling of carved wood above you, a perfume of lotus and clove curling around your head, and silence so deep it feels like history itself is holding its breath. Tonight, you are royalty. At least until you roll over and remember your mat doesn't flip itself.
The scent hits you first, soft, earthy, and just a little sharp. Not quite perfume, not quite dust. You shift your head and realize that tonight's rest isn't just about firmness, it's about fragrance. That pillow beneath your skull, it's not porcelain or jade. It's a cloth pouch stuffed with dried herbs. Welcome to the fragrant, floaty world of herbal pillows. That's right, before aromatherapy was a sleepy hashtag, ancient Chinese sleepers were tucking their dreams into cushions filled with mugwort, chrysanthemum, lotus leaves, and a dozen other botanicals that sound like they belong in a potion rather than a pillowcase. These herbal headrests weren't plush by modern standards, but compared to a porcelain brick, positively decadent. They were sometimes wrapped in silk or fine hemp, and the interior was filled with blends tailored to your needs. Trouble sleeping? Try a little Swanzhao Ren, sour jujube seed. Headaches? Go for mint and chrysanthemum. Troubled spirit? Add a pinch of sandalwood or frankincense. If you were really adventurous, you might sneak in a little dried tangerine peel. Citrus dreams, anyone? And it wasn't just about scent. Traditional Chinese medicine believed these herbs could affect the shen, the spirit, by gently working through the senses during sleep. Your nose inhaled the essence.
Your dreams absorbed the message. You woke up not just rested, but realigned. Fringe fact for tonight. Some pillows included dried earthworms or crushed beetle shells, not for scent, but for their supposed cooling or blood-moving properties. I know. Don't overthink it. Just be glad your pillow isn't squishy. These fragrant sleep aids were especially popular during summer months. Combined with bamboo mats and open windows, they helped cool the body, relax the nerves, and create a sleep experience that was one part botanical and one part sorcery. Think vintage spa, but no one's touching your feet. Some even believed these herbal pillows could influence dreams themselves. Mugwort, in particular, had a reputation as a dream enhancer, said to allow for prophetic visions or clearer subconscious communication. In Taoist traditions, placing mugwort near the head while sleeping could help guide the soul safely during its nightly wanderings. And yes, that meant your pillow was also your tour guide. Modern historians are torn on the effectiveness. Historians still argue whether these herbal pillows had any measurable impact on sleep quality or if people just really liked their bedding to smell like the inside of an apothecary drawer. There's little hard data, but plenty of anecdotal love letters to mugwort in old journals and medical texts. And not all herbal pillows were strictly medicinal. Some were given as gifts, romantic even. Imagine offering your beloved a handcrafted headrest scented with plum blossom and hope. If someone gave you a lavender-scented My Pillow today, you'd laugh. But in the Tang Dynasty, that was poetry with a side of flirtation. Tonight, your pillow breathes softly beneath your head. The scent is subtle, faint lotus with a touch of cooling mint. The cloth is stiff but not unforgiving. And as you exhale, you realize this isn't just sleep, it's infusion. You're not just dreaming, you're steeping. Let the herbs do their work. Let the night carry you like a leaf on a breeze. You're drifting into a story told by roots and petals, by traditions older than your great everything. Tonight, your dreams are botanical.
Something rustles softly near your shoulder, not alarming, just present. You open your eyes to the faint flicker of candlelight, its glow casting long, wavy shadows across the carved frame of your bed. But you're not alone, not quite, because tonight you've got company. No, not a sibling or another mosquito. This is the silent, sacred companionship of the bedside objects of ancient China. Forget your phone, your charging cable, or the glass of water teetering on the edge of your nightstand. Tonight's bedside table is packed with ancient ambiance and a few charms, just in case the supernatural decides to get frisky. Start with the ceramics. Small, elegant porcelain vessels might hold water, medicinal teas, or fragrant oils. Some were shaped like lotuses or clouds, just in case you forgot that your dreams were supposed to be pure and mildly poetic. Others were carved with yin-yang symbols, designed to balance your sleep energy as naturally as your qi-aligning bamboo mat. Then there's the candle, of course, or more accurately, an oil lamp. Bronze or pottery-based, filled with sesame or animal fat oil, its wick flickering gently in the draftless stillness. Some lamps had protective lids shaped like birds or mythical beasts to guard the flame and the sleeper from ill spirits. The light was soft, golden, and whisper quiet, perfect for those nights when the silence felt too loud. Now let's talk charms, because ancient sleepers didn't mess around when it came to bedtime protection. A small carved jade pendant, perhaps shaped like a cicada, symbol of rebirth, might rest beside your pillow. Or a slip of red silk embroidered with blessings, tucked under the bed or inside your headrest, like a secret message to the universe. And don't forget the peachwood sword, placed just under the bed to slice through any bad dreams or uninvited nighttime guests from the spirit realm. Fringe alert. Some households kept tiny stuffed dolls near the bed, not toys, but symbolic guardians. These were often gifted to children and meant to watch over them while they slept. Think of them as proto-plush talismans. Terrifying? Maybe, but also weirdly sweet. In wealthier homes, the bedside might include a small incense burner, releasing slow spirals of sandalwood or agarwood smoke, each puff a reminder that you were sleeping not just in a room, but in a curated sensory ecosystem. You weren't just resting, you were suspended in harmony. Even the placement of these objects mattered. The lamp always to the left, the water vessel near the foot, the charm just behind the headrest, close enough to guard your dreams, but not so close as to invite spirit misfires. Bedrooms were arranged with feng shui in mind. North-facing beds, closed doors, and always a clean pathway between the sleeper and the room's exit, in case your soul needed to step out for a midnight constitutional. Historians still argue whether these objects truly served their supernatural purposes or simply brought comfort in a world that got very, very dark after sundown. Were they barriers to ghosts, or just ways to feel safe in the night? Either way, tonight you are surrounded, quietly, respectfully, by the objects chosen to honor your rest. You glance at the flickering lamp, the soft puff of incense, the tiny, slightly unsettling doll with a protective glare. And in this curated stillness, you smile. You are warded. You are watched over. You are tucked in, ancient style. Tonight, your limbs feel weightless, your breath slow and silky. But somewhere under that linen robe, and just above your oddly obedient spine, a quiet idea begins to stir. Am I sleeping correctly? Because in ancient China, sleeping wasn't just a necessity, it was a doctrine. Welcome to the great philosophical sleep-off. Confucianism versus Taoism versus Buddhism, each with strong and sometimes hilariously contradictory opinions about how you should lie, rest, and drift. Let's start with the Confucians, the sleep minimalists. To them, bedtime was a moral checkpoint. The goal? Dignity, posture, self-regulation. You didn't sleep late. You didn't sprawl. You especially didn't drool. Confucian ideals held that a person's behavior during sleep reflected their inner character. So if you were tossing and turning, spiritually suspicious. Did you oversleep? Lack of discipline. Had messy dreams? Better recite the Analects before breakfast. Confucian beds, as you now know, were stiff, straightforward, and frequently punishing. A reminder that rest was only justified if it served the restoration of virtue. You could call it virtue napping. Just don't expect fluff. Enter the Taoists, bringing a whole new vibe. To them, sleep was a portal, a sacred pause where the spirit journeyed beyond the body. The goal wasn't to be stiff and still. The goal was flow, harmony, integration with nature. Taoist sleep posture? Often right side lying, knees slightly bent, palms facing upward, like a leaf floating downstream. Their beds might be modest, but the dreams were expansive. Taoist writings often described the soul traveling through heavens, walking among immortals, or receiving divine insights from celestial turtles. Yes, turtles. The key was detachment, allowing the body to soften, the mind to dissolve, and the spirit to explore without the rude interruption of alarm clocks or worldly expectations. Then we have the Buddhists. Particularly in later dynasties, Buddhist influence brought in even more nuance. Monks often slept sitting upright or on very narrow beds with their heads slightly elevated but unsupported, designed to avoid deep sleep and stay in a light, meditative state. The idea wasn't to escape into dreams, but to maintain awareness. Sleep was not indulgence, it was practice. And here's your philosophical fringe tidbit.
In some Buddhist temples, monks used wooden neck rings that would tilt them forward if they nodded off too deeply during meditation sleep hybrids. That's right, auto-wake features, but made of splinters. Despite these differences, all three schools agreed on one thing. Sleep mattered. Not just how long you did it, but how you did it. Were you mindful, balanced, positioned in a way that encouraged spiritual clarity and physical restoration? Even sleeping direction had a role. Many traditions favored lying with the head to the east or north, depending on astrological or geomantic considerations. West-facing sleepers? Questionable. That was sometimes associated with death or detachment, bad juju unless you were actively seeking enlightenment or really hated mornings. Historians still argue whether people actually followed these doctrines at home, or just nodded solemnly and then went full starfish as soon as the lights went out. Realistically, most folks probably fell somewhere between rigid posture purity and the occasional drool stain. And tonight, you lie somewhere in between too. A little Confucian discipline, a dash of Taoist softness, maybe a Buddhist half-awakefulness if that cricket chirps again. You're not just lying down, you're practicing, dreaming with intention, floating with philosophy. And if your foot's sticking out from under the quilt, well, even sages get chilly.
The candle flickers low. Your body feels heavy now, cocooned in linen and stillness. But somewhere nearby, you catch a glint, a shimmer in the dimness, cool, curved jade being rolled gently across a cheek. Because tonight, we're sneaking into a secret, sacred realm, the bedtime beauty regimens of ancient China. Forget your 12-step skincare routine and influencer-approved serums. The ancient Chinese had their own night rituals, and trust me, they were both sophisticated and mildly terrifying. Let's start with the superstar, the jade roller. Yes, your favorite Instagram tool is older than your great-great-great-grandma's laundry stick. Used by elite women and more than a few refined men, the jade roller was applied before sleep to cool the face, reduce inflammation, and stimulate qi circulation. Roll upward to lift the skin, roll outward to drain toxins, and roll gently across your temples to coax the dreams out of your pores. And this wasn't vanity. Beauty in ancient China wasn't just about looking good, it was about balance, health, and harmony. A glowing face meant glowing organs. A peaceful expression while sleeping, proof that your heart-mind, or sheen, was undisturbed. So, naturally, bedtime became the prime window for refining both body and soul. Now, let's get a little weirder. Fringe fact: some elite women applied pearl powder to their faces before bed. Yes, actual crushed pearls. Believed to nourish the skin, lighten complexion, and even extend life, pearl powder was mixed with water or honey and smoothed over the face like a nocturnal treasure mask. Bonus: if you rolled over too fast and smacked your jade headrest, at least your cheek sparkled on impact. And if pearls weren't your thing, try rice water tonics, ginseng root elixirs, or the occasional face padding with silk cloths soaked in rose water. Some formulas included dried chrysanthemum and ground lotus seed, applied delicately with a brush that looked suspiciously like something out of a painter's kit. Because what is your face, if not the most sacred canvas? But the most dramatic of all, sleep masks. No, not the plush, blackout kind. These were face-molding masks,
made from hardened paste mixtures of flour, medicinal herbs, and sometimes egg whites, applied in thin layers to tighten skin overnight. Imagine falling asleep with your face slowly petrifying into beauty. Ancient Botox? Maybe. Just don't smile while it dries. And it wasn't just about appearance. These rituals were deeply tied to health. According to traditional medicine, certain organ systems regenerate during specific nighttime hours. The liver, the lungs, the spleen, they each had their beauty window. Sleep was the perfect moment to assist that process externally, making you not only healthier, but ideally radiant. Of course, historians still argue whether these beauty regimens actually worked, or if they were the elite equivalent of bedtime theater. Were jade rollers improving circulation, or just making people feel like they had control over the chaos of aging? Either way, the commitment was real. So, tonight, as your cheek brushes against your modest mat, and your skin tingles with ghost memories of pearl dust and rose water, let your mind wander into that moonlit dressing room, the silent maidservant closing the curtain, the soft clink of jade against porcelain, the whisper of silk across a tired forehead. You may not be powdered or perfumed, but tonight, you rest like someone who believes beauty is not about effort, it's about intention. And a really good nighttime routine.
Something shifts in the air. Subtle, but there. A draft brushes across your arm, and even though the room is still, your spine straightens just a little. Not from cold, but from instinct. Because in ancient China, bedtime didn't just bring dreams, it also brought spirits. Tonight, we descend gently into the world of supernatural sleep protection, when no one went to bed without first warding off the things that might go bump or slither just outside the veil. Let's start with a truth that ancient Chinese culture never ignored. The night belonged to more than just humans. Ghosts, wandering spirits, ancestral echoes, rogue demons. These weren't fringe fears. They were common bedtime companions. And while you slept, your soul was said to partially leave the body, floating through dream realms that overlapped with the unseen world. So yeah, precautions were advised. Enter the bedtime guardians. The first line of defense? Peachwood. Slices of it, swords carved from it, or talismans inked with protective characters, all tucked into the corners of beds, above headboards, or beneath mats. Peachwood was believed to repel evil. It was nature's ghost ban, durable, symbolic, slightly aromatic, and utterly uninterested in letting a demon ruin your REM cycle. Then there were iron charms, often small, forged in the shape of coins, dragons, or thunder symbols. Iron was considered grounding, literally. Spirits couldn't cross it easily. Some families would place an iron hairpin or needle beneath the bed, just in case something ghostly tried to slip under the quilt and whisper existential doubts. Fringe tidbit? In certain villages, parents placed onion bulbs in children's sleeping quarters, not for cooking, but for ghost deflection. The strong odor was said to mask the child's life scent, making them less appetizing to hungry spirits. No guarantees on dream freshness, though. Of course, the truly fancy had options. Wealthy families might commission silk banners embroidered with protective mantras, or keep Taoist paper talismans tucked beneath pillows, the ink slowly flaking over the years like cosmic dust. Some of these included phrases invoking deities or heavenly generals tasked with night watch duties. You thought a bodyguard was impressive?
Try a celestial general stationed at your footboard. Another popular defense was mirrors. Small ones, bronze and highly polished, were positioned to reflect malevolent energy. Hung at bed corners or placed near the head, they served as metaphysical shields. Superstition held that spirits could not bear to see their own image and would flee rather than face the horror of their ghostly reflection. Kind of like vampiric skincare gone wrong. And not all protectors were metal or wood. Some were rituals. A whispered incantation, a slow circle traced around the bed with incense smoke, even a humble spit on the floor in some folk traditions, meant to confuse spirits with sudden, erratic human energy. Glamorous? No. Weirdly effective? Maybe. Historians still argue whether these practices were rooted more in belief or social control. Was it spiritual protection, or simply a way to ritualize the boundary between wakefulness and the unknown? Maybe both. Maybe just enough. Tonight you feel the weight of those rituals in the air. A protective stillness. Not heavy, but watchful. The peachwood charm under your mat is unseen but somehow reassuring. The mirror on the dresser doesn't reflect your face, but you sense it's doing its job. So sleep, knowing that ancient hands have drawn a circle around you, etched in salt, iron, and story. Let your spirit drift bravely, tethered by protection older than fear itself. You are guarded. You are sealed. You are ghost-proofed.
Tonight's silence is different, heavier. A silence so dense it feels padded with secrets and breathless with tension. Because this isn't just any room, and you're not just any sleeper. You're an emperor, lying beneath embroidered silk, head propped on a jade headrest shaped like a curled dragon, eyes wide open while your empire sleeps. Welcome to the restless sleep of rulers, where the stakes of bedtime are impossibly high, and true peace never really arrives. Let's get one thing straight. For emperors of ancient China, sleep was a dangerous game. You didn't just lie down and dream of dumplings. You dreamt of coups, of poisoned tea, of whispering eunuchs, shifting alliances, and the mandate of heaven slipping through your fingers like sand. Sure, your sleep chamber was stunning. Walls painted with phoenixes, curtains thick with brocade, incense burning like a poem. But every soft detail was built atop paranoia. Emperors didn't sleep in the same bed 2 nights in a row. That's your first clue. Many had multiple sleep chambers within the palace complex and rotated unpredictably. Why? Because if someone wanted to slip poison into your wine or send an assassin through a paper window, they had to find you first. And who shared your bed? Maybe a concubine, maybe no one. Rarely your empress. Sometimes no one was allowed closer than the foot of the bed. Even intimacy was filtered through layers of control and protocol. You couldn't relax. You could only pretend to. Fringe fact: some emperors had false pillows, hollow headrests, or decoy quilts with iron cores inside, just in case someone tried to strike during sleep. One Ming ruler even slept with a ceremonial blade tucked into the mattress seam. Nothing says rest well like cuddling a weapon. Your guards? Close, but not too close. Palace eunuchs often stood vigil at the outer door, eyes sharp in the lantern light, trained to detect not just movement, but intent. The emperor's sleep was part performance, part fortress. To the people, you were divine. To yourself, you were exhausted. And yet, despite the constant anxiety, sleep was essential, a ritual to reset the mind and connect with the heavens. Dreams held meaning, especially for a ruler. Did you see a red crane flying west? Time to call your astrologer. Did your ancestors appear looking disappointed? Better schedule a shrine visit. The imperial dreamscape wasn't escapism, it was prophecy. Some emperors even invited Taoist priests to monitor their dreams, waiting outside the chamber to hear any strange mutterings or requests. Because what if the dream held a clue, a warning, a whisper from the gods? Historians still argue whether these rulers ever truly rested or merely paused between bouts of vigilance. Was the opulence of their sleeping quarters soothing or a reminder of all they stood to lose? And tonight, as you lie here, wrapped in imagined silk, shadowed by dragon-shaped candle holders, you feel it too. The tension, the stillness that isn't peaceful but strategic, every breath measured, every twitch noticed by unseen attendants. Sleep, for an emperor, was not surrender. It was strategy, a performance with the eyes closed. So let them think you're sleeping. Let the incense curl toward the ceiling and the jade stay cool beneath your head. But deep down, you know, there is no soft dream for a person with that much weight on their crown.
You wake slowly, the weight of 1,000 years resting gently in your bones. There's a flicker of thought, a whisper from the back of your brain. Wait, where's the memory foam? And then you remember, all right, you've spent the night on slabs, bricks, herbal bundles, and celestial expectations. Now, it's time to come home. But before you roll into your own familiar bed, let's take a long, lingering look at how far we've come, from porcelain headrests to plush, overstuffed mattresses that hug you like a golden retriever after a thunderstorm. Welcome to the final juxtaposition, from pillowless past to plush present. Let's be honest. If you took an ancient Chinese sleeper and dropped them into a modern mattress store, they'd probably cry. Not from joy, from confusion. Softness was once a sign of indulgence, laziness, maybe even moral decay. Now, it's the goal. We pay top dollar to be coddled, elevated, and held like royalty by layers of engineered foam and synthetic goose dreams. Modern beds are clouds with posture control. You've got temperature-sensitive memory foam, sleep trackers built into the mattress, lavender-scented weighted blankets, and 37 different pillow types just for neck support. Ancient sleepers had one, the neck fracture special, possibly carved from a mineral that could double as a weapon. You, right now, probably have a favorite pillow, a preferred firmness, maybe a duvet that could smother a small child. And it's lovely, no judgment. But just think of the contrast. Your average modern sleeper is doing everything they can to replicate comfort, while ancient Chinese sleepers focused on posture, discipline, and dream clarity. So, who had it right? Some argue we've gone too far into softness, that the ancient Chinese had it figured out with their posture-preserving platforms and cheese-circulating chill pads, that sleeping on a firm surface actually aligns your spine better, reduces back pain, and encourages better breathing. Minimalism, after all, is trending again. Maybe porcelain is due for a comeback. Others, understandably, say no thank you. They'll keep their contour pillow, thank you very much, and no amount of cheese stagnation fear is going to make them trade down to a brick. Fringe tidbit. In parts of rural China today, you can still find families who use traditional wooden or bamboo pillows, swearing by their cooling effect and long-term spinal benefits. These aren't museum relics, they're living traditions, gently refusing to be fluffed into extinction. But here's the twist. Even with all our options, our sleep isn't always better. Modern sleepers often report insomnia, racing thoughts, and restless tossing. Could it be we've lost something? A sense of ritual, of intention? The belief that sleep is sacred, not just a necessary shutdown? Maybe the ancients had something in their evening routines, a respect for rest, a recognition that night is a spiritual space. Tonight, as you consider your own bedtime, you might chuckle at the thought of swapping your mattress for a salt brick. Fair. But maybe you'll light some incense. Maybe you'll breathe deeper, lie a little flatter, let go of the idea that sleep has to be a production. Just rest, with purpose, with simplicity, like someone who's not being cradled, but anchored. Because after all this time, maybe that's what we've really been craving. Not more fluff, but more meaning.
You've arrived at the end, and tonight, the hush around you feels different, deeper, sacred. The air settles, the mat beneath you presses with gentle familiarity. The last candle flickers out in your mind, but before you drift entirely, there's one final sleep to explore, the one that never ends. Tonight, we lay down not just in history, but in legacy. Welcome to the final resting place, beds of the afterlife. In ancient China, the dead didn't simply get buried. They were tucked in, prepared, cared for. Because sleep, after all, was just practice for death, and death was considered an eternal sleep, one best taken seriously. Let's begin with the burial beds. These weren't your average pine box affairs. Wealthy nobles and royals were laid to rest in lavish wooden chambers built within tombs, complete with raised platforms, sleeping mats, and headrests. The goal? To recreate a tranquil sleep chamber for eternity. You weren't just interred, you were tenderly housed. And the headrests? Yes, they came along too. In fact, some of the most beautifully preserved porcelain, jade, and wooden headrests we have today were found in tombs. Many were engraved with protective inscriptions like, "Sleep in stillness, return not in sorrow." The belief was that the soul, though journeying far, would rest peacefully as long as the body was respected. Here's a chilling but fascinating fringe fact. Some headrests were crafted posthumously for the deceased based on dream interpretations had by their surviving relatives. If Aunt Lee appeared in a vision demanding something cooler, a jade headrest might be ordered immediately. Ghost comfort first. Tomb beds were often accompanied by dream guides, paintings, carvings, or small figurines meant to accompany the soul into the next realm. There were pillows shaped like clouds, mats carved with cranes mid-flight, and even lacquer boxes filled with dried herbs and perfumes, just in case the afterlife had a humidity problem. And it wasn't just for emperors. Modest families made their own funerary pillows from bamboo or wood, laid out with love and care. The idea wasn't fear, it was respect, a final act of grace for a loved one who'd traded day for night. Historians still argue whether these burial sleep setups reflected real beliefs about death's nature or were symbolic gestures of continuity and comfort. Either way, they speak volumes about how deeply sleep and death were connected, not as opposites, but as twins, holding hands in the dark. And now, here you are, lying in a quiet room, centuries later. You've wandered through all 30 nights, felt the cool porcelain curve beneath your neck, shared beds with cousins and emperors, sniffed the herbal whispers of mugwort and silk. You've slept hard. You've slept wisely. And as you close your eyes this final time tonight, know this: you're part of the same lineage. Every breath you take as you drift away connects you to the silent sleepers and dynasties past, farmers and scholars, warriors and poets, each finding their rest not in softness, but in structure.
not in indulgence, but in reverence. Let the night take you gently, one last time.
Your breath slows now, each inhale quieter than the last. You don't need to move anymore. There's no more history to trace, no more artifacts to cradle. Just the quiet, pulsing calm of knowing you've been carried through centuries, tucked under a blanket woven from time. Imagine the flicker of oil lamps fading into starlight, the low rustle of bamboo mats folding into silence, a headrest cool and steady beneath you, no longer demanding stillness, just offering it. You don't have to remember the names, not the dynasties, the herbs, the carvings, or the dreams, just the feeling, that simple anchored sensation of lying down and being told, without words, you're safe. Let your arms grow heavy. Let your mind cloud over, not with worry, but with soft gray wisps, the kind that cradle the moon in early dawn. If there's a sound, let it be distant. If there's a thought, let it pass. You don't need to prepare for anything anymore. You've walked the path, felt the firmness, breathed the incense. Tonight, you are not a guest in history. You are a part of it, and your rest is not borrowed, but earned. Close your eyes. Sink low. Let go. You're home now.